Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this webinar and Q&A session for the Nevada NASA Space Grant and Nevada NASA EPSCoR Research Infrastructure Opportunities. My name is Eric Wilcox. I am research professor in the Division of Atmospheric Sciences at the Desert Research Institute, and I am statewide director for the Nevada NASA Space Grant and EPSCoR programs. I'm joined by our two folks in the NVSGC system office that support these programs as well, so I'll have them introduce themselves. Marcy and then Darlene, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Marcy Jackson. I'm the director of the system-sponsored programs and EPSCoR office at NVSGC. I'm filling in as the research administrator for the NASA programs as we're doing a hiring, and hopefully there'll be someone in place for that soon. Darlene?
Hello, I am Darlene Aranda. I am the NASA program coordinator. I help administer the programs here.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think what I'll do is I will just jump right into it, and I will show you briefly an orientation of how to find the solicitations if you haven't already, and then hit some of the high points of the solicitations, hopefully not taking more than 20-30 minutes, and then I'll open it up for questions. Anybody can ask any questions. And hopefully we won't take more than 45 minutes to an hour for this meeting. So I'm going to share my screen and let me. So I typically start this by just showing you how to find the solicitations, just to make sure everybody knows. So this is my, what you're seeing is my browser window, and this is our web page. Typically, even I, because I'm too lazy to bookmark it, I guess, I just go to Google and I type Nevada NASA programs, and it's the first hit. And if you go to funding opportunities, that's where all our solicitations are. And that comes up, and we've just released most of our, or all of our in-state funding opportunities have just been released. So you'll see the student opportunities there. And then if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see the faculty solicitations there. And today's meeting is specifically about the research infrastructure opportunities. So these are essentially seed grants for research projects. If you're interested in the pre-college or higher ed programs for hands-on training, teacher training, or curriculum development grants, we're going to have a separate webinar on that a little bit later in the month, I think. And so the two research infrastructure ones are now in the middle of our screen. There's two of them. One is the Space Grant Research Infrastructure Program, and the other is the EPSCoR Research Infrastructure Development Seed Program. And the programs are slightly different. They're similar in the sense that they both provide seed grants for research activities. They differ a little bit in the dollar amounts, the availability of matching funds, and expectations as far as student engagement, and we can get involved in the differences, the specific differences. If you're wondering why we have these two similar but distinct programs, it's basically just because the money comes from two separate federal pots of money. And those two, they both come from NASA, but the EPSCoR pot of money is different from the Space Grant pot of money. And the EPSCoR money has a slightly different emphasis and a slightly different set of goals than the Space Grant money does. And so that's why we have to keep these two programs separate, and why they have these sort of subtle differences. So the two programs are here. I'm just going to use the Space Grant Research Infrastructure as an example. You can just click on the link here, and it'll take you to the page, which talks about a brief summary of the program, the eligibility, a summary of the funding, and I'm going to walk through some more of these details. So if it seems like I'm hurrying through it, don't worry. We'll be going back. And then the actual document that has all of the details is this little blue link down here that says solicitation. So please read the full solicitation. So if you click that link, it brings up a PDF file. And I'll switch to that PDF file in just a minute. You'll also notice here's a link for this meeting, which you're already in. So you've already found your way here. And then we try to have all of our programs go through a submission process through the website. So when you submit a proposal to this program, you'll actually click the link right here to submit your proposal. So let me switch over then. So that's the web page, and that's where you'll find the solicitations. Let me just minimize this to get it out of the way. I have open here both of the PDF files. Let me find, that's the EPSCoR one. Let me find the Space Grant one, since that was just the one we were looking at. So if you click that link that says, please read the full solicitation, that blue link that says solicitation, it will bring up this PDF file. This is the Space Grant Research Infrastructure Program. And this has all the complete details for the program and how to propose to it. And so I will walk through it briefly here. First important thing right up front is the deadline. Deadline for this program is March 4 at 5 p.m. So you'll want to click that link that I just showed you that says proceed to submit proposals. And we always advise people you want to be ready to submit your proposal early. Because not always, but there sometimes can be technical issues. We have had in the past, occasionally some folks have difficulty with the electronic submission through the website. And so it is possible to email proposals to us in that instance, but we have to get the proposal by the deadline in order to have a fair competition. So that's another good reason to make sure you get to that link a little bit early, maybe even a day early would be ideal. So just in case there's any technical issues, you can be sure to reach us by phone or email and make sure that we get your submission, even if you have difficulty with the link or any other issue. Let's see. The other point here, which I think is also repeated further down, is the period of performance. So we're expecting that these grants will be for the period August through April 9, and that April 9 date is an odd date, but that's when our federal grant will end. And so we are not sure, and at this point not expecting necessarily to get any extension on our federal award. Typically in the past, we have granted no-cost extensions to projects that don't finish by the end of the period of performance. Because this is the final year of our 5-year funding in the Space Grant Program, the federal dollars, we're going to be strongly encouraging faculty to do their projects within the period of performance for that's specified here. So if you scroll down a little bit here, there's an important note at the top, and this is something that we do with all of our solicitations, is you'll see throughout the document that we refer to a number of supporting documents, including a budget template, which you'll want to use to work with your business office to develop a budget for your project. We also include copies of the NASA strategic plan, the NVSGC Science and Technology plan, the Nevada State Governor's Office of Economic Development plan. And these are some of the things that you'll see as we go through this that we refer to, because we want your proposal to explain how your project is relevant to NASA's goals and strategic plan, and also how it's relevant to NVSGC and the state's plans for science and technology development in the state. And so to find those documents, you can actually just click the little paper clip. And let me widen my window here, which it's not doing. There we go. And you'll see on the right-hand side here, you'll see the actual documents that we refer to throughout this document are attached to this PDF file in this attachments area. So there's a cover page that we ask that you put on the front. And then, as I mentioned before, some of the other supporting documents, the budget template as an Excel sheet, and then the other documents that I mentioned there are attached here as well. So, so if you just open this solicitation in your web browser, you may not be able to access these attachments. So it's very important to, once you open it in your browser, to actually download the PDF file to your computer and open it in the Acrobat Reader, and then you'll be able to pull down these attachments. So there's a little bit of background here. The goal of this space grant funding, which again, as I noted, is slightly different than the goals of the EPSCoR program. So once we go through the space grant solicitation, we'll quickly go through the EPSCoR solicitation and hit the parts that are different. The goals of the space grant program are to develop a diverse and capable STEM workforce. And we do that by providing funds for NASA-related faculty and workforce development projects. So what we're looking for are projects led by NSHE faculty that are contributing research or technology development projects that are aligned with NASA's research and technology goals and are also helping to develop STEM capabilities in the state and develop and help us develop a STEM workforce. As a note here, these funds are not intended to be used for augmenting an existing funding. These funds are much more appropriate for a small seed activity, either a project that is just small in scope and fits well, or perhaps as an initial investigation that you may then use the results of to go seek a bigger grant through a bigger program, rather than the other way around where you've already got a big grant, you want a little bit of money to augment that. These funds are not necessarily appropriate for that. Eligibility. Any faculty within the NSHE system at any NSHE institution are eligible to apply for these funds. We particularly encourage early career faculty, women, and members of the faculty from other underrepresented groups, especially encouraged to apply. While some of the student programs do have a citizenship requirement within NASA, these programs do not have a citizenship requirement. So you do not need to be a US citizen to apply for these funds. Another stipulation is that if you are already one of our sub-grant recipients, you already have a space grant project that's active or a NASA EPSCoR project that is active, you're not eligible to apply for these funds until after your project ends. We do, perhaps because of that odd April 9 date, we may have some folks who have an active project that they plan to complete by April of this year, and I believe we will allow proposals from those individuals because they're prior, if they are clear in their proposal that their prior project will end on that date in April or May of this year. And then the other thing is that the two projects that we're talking about here today, the Space Grant Research Infrastructure and the EPSCoR Research Infrastructure Development Seed, you can't apply for both of them. So we want you to pick one or the other and apply for one or the other, not both. For the research infrastructure, I'm going to close this just to get the clutter out of the way. For the research, for the Space Grant Research Infrastructure Program, the available funds for each of these projects are $25,000 in federal funds, and we are anticipating the ability to provide $25,000 in state matching funds as well. That is contingent on the availability of those funds, but generally we've been able to make that match. We anticipate as many as 4 of these awards may be made in this round. I'll return to the budget information a little while later when we get to the specific, the proposal details. You can have a collaboration with another NSHE institution if you like. It's not common with these grants because these grants are relatively small. The award will be made as a sub-award from Marcy's office, the NSHE Sponsored Project Office. Will be made as a sub-award from the NSHE Sponsored Project Office to your home institution, and then you can issue a sub-award to another institution. And then the other thing is that the availability of these funds does depend on us getting our federal award. So we don't actually have our federal funds yet. But we have been told we will get them. Our proposal for our 5th-year extension was granted, and we've been assured that the funds for this program will come. We don't have them in-house yet. So if there is, for example, a closure of the federal government or some other obstacle from Washington, D.C., there is a possibility that there could be delays in this program associated with that because we do not have the funds in hand yet. But we do anticipate being able to make these subawards by August. You will be required to prepare progress and final reports. We'll provide some more details on that when you get your grant awarded. We also frequently, we have specific reporting that we have to make to the Space Grant Office at NASA headquarters, which includes things like providing names and information about students that are involved in space grant projects. So if you get one of these awards, you should expect to hear from me periodically asking for you to fill out some reporting forms that we have so that we can collect the data that we need to make our required reporting to NASA headquarters. Also, we do a statewide meeting in the spring every year, usually in April. And we ask that the faculty that get awarded projects join us for that meeting. We may invite a subset of them to make a presentation, an oral presentation. We usually have 3 or 4 presentations by NSHE faculty that we've funded. And then we have lots of student posters. So if you have students involved in your project, it's a great opportunity to have a student present a poster on your research results at that conference. So here are the details on the proposal. Type double-spaced, type single-spaced, easy to read typeface like Times Roman and 12-point. Number of pages, 1-inch margins. These are generally consistent with NASA's general rules for proposals. This is a key thing that's underlined here. I have to assemble a panel of colleagues generally colleagues within the state of Nevada who are familiar with our programs to review these proposals. You should not expect that your proposal will be reviewed by somebody who is an expert in your field. So you should write a proposal that is utilizing language that is not so specific to your scientific discipline that people who are outside your scientific discipline won't understand what you're proposing to do. This is really crucial. It will affect the review of your proposal if the reviewers aren't able to sort of understand what it is you're proposing to do, the proposal won't score well. There's a cover page form that's part of the attachments here that you will fill out, and you'll need to sign and get the signature of your your submitting authority. It's usually somebody in your business office of your department or your sponsored project office at your campus. Here's the project description, limited to 5 pages. So our proposals are relatively short for these programs. Since the dollar amounts are small, we don't ask for a super extensive proposal. A 5-page limit, a title, an abstract of not more than 300 words, a sort of summary of the project, project goals, objectives, and methods, anticipated products from your project, a list of the folks that are going to be involved in the project and their expertise and how they're contributing to the project. If there are participants that you've invited that are going to collaborate with you on the project, it's a good idea to get a letter of support from those individuals, a letter that specifically acknowledges that they're named in your proposal and that they're agreeing to do what your project says they're going to do. This is a good way to establish a deeper connection to NASA. If you have a NASA colleague, you probably can't, well, for sure, you can't give them any money from these grants. But if you have a colleague at NASA who is doing closely related work, and they're willing to just consult or offer advice, that's a good contact to get a letter from them saying that your project's really well aligned with the research interests of NASA and that they're willing to meet with you periodically through the project or whatever agreement you come to with them. The goals of Space Grant are workforce development. So we do encourage you for these projects to involve students in the research. And if you do so, you should include a plan for that student involvement, how you're going to recruit them, how you're going to supervise them and mentor them. We also ask our reviewers if the project conveyed a convincing plan for how students from underrepresented groups will be recruited for the project. So you should be thinking about that. NASA does collect the demographic data on the students that are reached by our projects, and they are expecting us to be reaching a diverse population of students. Certainly a student body that's representative of the diversity of NSHE institutions. And so you should be thinking about how your project can recruit students from that diverse student body. And then this is key. We have to explain to NASA, in fact, NASA wants to know specifically which mission directorate our projects are aligned with. So I think we're going to try to set it up this year so that you're specifically asked which mission directorate your project is best aligned with. So it would be a good idea to articulate that in your proposal. And try to find either, if you have contacts at NASA, it's a great way to do this, or in the NASA strategic plan that's attached here, or in some of the other documents which have details about some of the different mission directorates and the NASA centers. Try to find some specific language in NASA's strategic and technology development goals that align with your project. So you can say, you can't just say, well, my project is aligned with NASA because it has to do with space. But you can say something like, NASA has a deep interest in understanding this specific process. There's a satellite mission that is designed specifically to look at some aspect of this moon of some planet, and we're using data specifically from that mission to look at this science question, which is related to this broader goal that NASA has related to planetary science, or something very specific. The more specific you can be, the more convincing and the better the proposal will review. There's some details there on the budget. We already talked about the $25,000 federal, $25,000 state matching. I encourage you to reach out early to your the business staff in your department or whoever it is who helps you with budgeting for your proposals, and reach out to us with questions about the budget, especially early in the process, well in advance of the deadline. We're happy to answer any questions, including specific questions about indirect costs or F&A, and how those can factor into institutional match and things like that. As I noted in the attachments on the paperclip there is actually a budget template there. That is the template we want. We want you to fill out your budget in that template and get all the appropriate signatures on that budget template. There's some restrictions. Foreign travel is generally not allowed unless you get some prior approval. And then there are restrictions on using the funds to purchase equipment from certain companies in China. There is a restriction on funds to collaborate directly with institutions in China. These are just stipulations that are in the federal law that any NASA grant is subject to. And funds cannot be used for construction or remodeling of facilities. Separate from the 5-page technical document, we also ask that you include, limited to 1 page, a listing of prior support from NASA or NASA EPSCoR or space grant funded activities. There's no limit on how many references, citations you include. We ask that you have a CV or biographical sketch for all the PIs and co-PIs that that are going to have a major role in the project. So, if you're just having some student involvement, hourly students as undergraduates or some graduate student, but you haven't recruited the graduate student yet, or you don't know, that's fine. You don't need CVs for them, but faculty participants, postdoc participants, those kinds of folks, we would ask that you have a CV for each of those individuals. And in your technical document, you'd want to be, I think, as we noted above, we want you to be clear on what the role of each of those individuals is going to be. And be clear also about what students, so if you're going to have students involved, be clear about exactly what tasks the students are going to be doing versus what tasks faculty or postdocs are going to be doing. We strongly encourage for all of our programs that you seek a letter of support from NASA. Again, this really helps to establish that the work that you're proposing to do is well aligned with NASA's interests. If there's somebody at a NASA center who is interested in the work you're doing and wants to benefit from the results of it, or wants to at least keep abreast of what the results are of your project, a letter of support from that person goes a long way to help building that case. So I encourage you to seek that out. If you don't have a contact or you don't even know where to start, please don't hesitate to reach out to me early in the process. I may be able to help. I know lots of people at NASA. I don't know necessarily lots of people outside of my area of expertise, but I know people who know people. And so, certainly I'm willing to help reach out to folks in my network to help see if we can find somebody within NASA who's willing to hear about your project and maybe provide you with a letter of support. And that could be valuable down the road if your project is successful and then you want to write a proposal for a bigger project. That would be somebody that you might want to have as a funded collaborator on a bigger project. And then the last thing I would say on that is that I know from my experience at NASA centers that there's a lot of folks that work at NASA centers who aren't necessarily NASA employees. They're contractors or maybe a university affiliate, but they sit at a NASA center. For my purposes, that is equivalent to a NASA participant. So don't worry if the person that you know at the NASA center is a contractor and not a civil servant, that's fine. If they're working at a NASA center, that's a valuable connection, regardless of who exactly their employer is. There's the submission guidelines again. We ask that you do it through the link. It's on the web page. We actually specify the file name for the PDF file that you're going to upload as your submission, so please take note of that. As I noted a couple of times already, there's a cover page that needs signatures that we want you to include in your PDF file that's attached to this document, so be sure to fill that out. And then as a minor detail, we do try to collect photos, particularly photos of students involved in projects. We may ask you to write a sort of general interest blurb about your project with some pictures. Those are things that NASA asks us to provide them. And they may publicize some of these activities, or we may publicize some of these activities. And so we may ask you for some photos and have students and other participants in your project sign a photo release. So don't be shocked if we do that. And then there's some details here on the evaluation of proposals. Again, what I do is I form a panel, generally of our colleagues within NSHE institutions. I try to find people who have been involved in our programs in the past, who have some knowledge of our programs and their goals. They will evaluate the research goals and objectives of your project, the merit of it. They'll be looking for clearly defined methods that are aligned with the objectives. They'll be looking at those CVs to see if it seems appropriate that the folks that are proposing to do the work seem like they have the appropriate background and expertise to do that work. They'll be looking at the anticipated products and outcomes. So, we'll be looking for concrete outcomes, publications, conference presentations, conference papers, student presentations, dissertations, theses. These are things that, in fact, we're going to send you, if you're funded, we're going to send you a long form where we ask you to list all of these things that come out of these projects. So we have to report all these to NASA. So that's what we're looking for these projects to produce. Again, something that is clearly understandable to folks from a variety of backgrounds. Will help your proposal be well reviewed. Alignment with one or more of the NASA mission directorates. Again, be specific about which mission directorate your project is aligned with and how it aligns with that mission directorate. And then how your project aligns with Nevada's science and technology development goals as articulated by NSHE, or economic development goals as articulated by the Governor's Office of Economic Development. And again, we've included those documents for you to refer to. We'll review the budget. And if you have letters of support, and in particular a NASA letter of support, that will help your project look good. And there's our contact information. So that's this space grant research infrastructure solicitation. Let me very quickly go to the EPSCoR Research Infrastructure Development Seed Grant. And we won't go in detail because many things are fairly similar. Second, sorry. There we go. I think it's the same deadline. Anyway, March 6th, 5 p.m. It's a separate link for this program, but you find it on our webpage through the same process. The goals of the EPSCoR program are different from the goals of the Space Grant program. They're similar, but not identical. But the goal of EPSCoR is to develop research capacity in the state to make researchers in Nevada more competitive in the national sphere for research projects nationally. So what we're looking for are projects that will help build the capacity for your lab, your institution, to conduct research of interest to NASA so that you or your department or your institution can be more competitive in the future for national projects, particularly funded through NASA or other federal agencies that are doing research of interest or of relevance to NASA's goals. So in fact, we actually, I think it says further down that we expect that recipients of these awards will, as a product of the project, submit a proposal as an outcome of the project, submit a proposal to a bigger national program, either a NASA funding opportunity or a funding opportunity through another agency that's interested in the work. Let's see. So these sort of goals are sort of articulated here in a number of different ways. Again, there's similar to the other one. There's a bunch of attachments here that include things like NASA's strategic plan and the science and technology plans. A lot of the same documents. So we want you to look through those documents and use language from those documents to try to articulate as specifically as you can how your project meets these goals and the goals that are articulated in those documents. Also, it's a goal of ours, as I've talked about already, it's a goal of this program to help establish connections with NASA centers. So again, for this project, it is highly valuable that you have some kind of connection to a NASA center, or I suppose it says here, an industry, especially with growing private sector interest. I mean, if you have a connection to a private company that's engaged in space industry, that would be a viable connection as well. And again, if you have questions about that or you need help with that, please reach out to me. I'm happy to help try to make those connections ahead of our deadline. We do have an interest in this program in expanding STEM education goals. The projects that tend to get funded in the research infrastructure, the space grant research infrastructure that we just talked about a few minutes ago, tend to have student participation. Student participation is not a requirement for the EPSCoR program, but you can include student participants in your EPSCoR project. Here again, it says seed grant proposals must result in a submission of a new proposal to NASA or another relevant program at another agency. There isn't, as with the other program, there's no requirement to collaborate with another NSHE institution. And it's not a requirement that the funds be used to support students, but collaborations or student support is allowed. So you don't have to, but you can. Same eligibility rules, any NSHE faculty member. The funding levels are different, so there's less money in this program. So the funds are a little bit smaller. The projects are targeted to not to exceed 31,000, and we expect to fund 2 projects in this program. And I noticed oh, okay. I thought it said something there about matching funds, but now I don't see it. So I guess it's not there.
There are on this one, Eric will have them put their entire budget in the federal line. And if awarded, we may ask to move some funds to state program match based upon what happens with that award year. But it doesn't have the same split as the space grant. So put everything on EPSCoR in the federal line, and we may change after the fact.
Okay. Good. Okay. So yeah. So there it is. It is say there. It's expected each institution involved will receive both federal and state matching funds, but maybe that's not worded as best as it could. Yeah, if you look in this like the space grant one, there's a budget template that we want you to work with. You'll want to put everything in the federal column on that budget template. And I think everything else is more or less the same. So I'm not going to go in detail. I think and the project description, it doesn't have a requirement here that you include a description of the student participation and student recruitment, because that's not a requirement of this program. If you do want to propose to include students in your project, it's a good idea to explain in your technical document what activities the students are going to be doing and how you're going to be overseeing the student work. Same restrictions are involved. As with the other program. So I think everything else is the same. Yeah. Similar to the other, I will have these reviewed. The review criteria are slightly different because, again, the student involvement is not a requirement of this program, but it's fairly similar. It will be a different panel. It's generally 2 different panels review these 2 programs, but the process is relatively similar. And then again, there's our contact information at the bottom. So with that, I'm going to stop the share and I'm going to open it up to questions. Brian, yeah, go ahead.
Does my mic work? It's okay?
Yeah.
Okay, it's good to see everybody. I was expecting to see a rule there that was prohibiting spending money on postdocs or graduate students of Chinese citizenship. Is that allowed?
I believe it is allowed.
Okay.
I don't think we are restricted in that sense. They have to be, they have to be a student employed as a research assistant in your U.S. institution. So they can't be participating as an employee of a Chinese institution.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that answers it. Thanks.
Yeah. Other questions? Marcy, was there anything that I missed?
Just one clarification maybe on the budgets. So in April, we're going to be having our annual meeting here in Las Vegas. So next year it will be in Reno. So if you are someone who is in Las Vegas, you'll want to put in travel funds to go to Reno next spring for the annual meeting. And he did mention that you need to go through your sponsor programs or business office. They do need to sign the cover page as well as the budget. So even though it's coming to NSHE, it should be treated like any other proposal that you do. If you have a 3-day or a 4-day requirement to have everything to your sponsor programs office, please do follow your internal policies on that. We do have the budget form that we want you to use. And then you can use the budget justification, just your standard with everything explained, especially on the travel. We want to know if you're going to a conference to disseminate results for that sort of thing, how it really is relevant to what you're doing. And I think that's all I have.
Okay. Thank you for that. June?
Yes, I just joined since I had another meeting going on. Probably you may already addressed it, but my question is that what is the restriction to apply those two space grant and EPSCoR grants? So for example, the all three invited PI also eligible to write any of these grants or disqualified?
The eligibility is any NSHE faculty member, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, so any faculty member at any NSHE institution. Yeah.
That is eligible.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, there's no citizenship requirement for these. Some of our student programs, you have to be a U.S. citizen, but for these faculty programs, that's not a restriction. So any NSHE faculty member from any NSHE campus can apply.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Huang, I want to go.
Hi, Eric. I have can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I have two questions. The first is the budget includes indirect costs, right? So the total cost is about 50,000 in total, something like that.
Yes.
Okay. The second question is, are you encouraging like recruiting undergraduate student or graduate students? Is there like a preference?
There is no preference.
Okay.
You know, especially for the space grant one, we encourage student engagement. I think more important is how you're going to engage the students. Are they going to have a real authentic, I mean, these are the kinds of things that reviewers would be looking for. Are the students going to have a real authentic experience? Are they going to be hands-on something? Are they going to be picking up really valuable skills? And how are they going to be mentored? And I mentioned like recruiting. So, you know, how are you going to recruit students to your project? Those are all good things you can be thinking about for your project. But there's no preference for undergraduates versus graduates or the other way around. Everybody's valuable. Marcy?
Can I clarify that on the indirect? So say on space grant, it says $25,000 federal. That is your direct and indirect cost. You have a total of 25,000. And then the match is 25,000, and that includes direct costs as well as your indirect in costs. So yeah, or on the exports 31,000, and that's direct and indirect cost. Your total is 31,000.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? If there isn't, I'll bring it to an end and you all can have the balance of your hour back. But rest assured that we're here. Our contact information is all over our webpage. It's on each one of these solicitations. So do not hesitate to reach out to us. Again, if you are struggling to make contact with somebody at NASA, but you want to, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I can't guarantee that I'll find the right person, but I can at least help. I can make an effort to try. Okay, then if there are no more questions, we'll go ahead and close the meeting. So thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you.